The quiet buzz of my dead husband's locked phone cut through the room while my own children signed away his $50 million empire. Still, I ran my thumb over the black screen like you'd touch a gravestone, pretending not to hear them calling me Mom like a formality. As its faint light flickered, their voices dripped reassurance, children comforting the mother they'd quietly dethroned. While that glow grew, I smelled deceit the way you smell gas before a fire, thick, invisible, familial. The same children who stripped me of power never imagined their father's voice was trapped inside this device. That's when I knew a mother doesn't scream for justice, she unlocks it and lets her children watch it burn. We're about to begin, but if you'd like, share where you're joining from. It reminds me this story doesn't echo into silence, it lands somewhere real. Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. Evan chose the formal living room, not the kitchen. That was my first clue something was wrong. We'd always handled real conversations at the kitchen table, coffee rings, grocery lists, unpaid bills. The living room was for guests for show. Today, apparently, I was the guest. I sat in my armchair, the one with the tiny rip Riley made with a toy dinosaur years ago. They sat opposite me, lined up on the sofa like a board of directors. Evan held a leather portfolio. Melissa had her tablet and a pen she kept clicking. Ryan's laptop was open, but he wasn't really looking at it. All three were dressed like they'd just walked out of separate, important meetings. Mom, Evan began, using his practiced investor voice, we know this is a hard time, so we put together a simple summary of Dad's estate for you. He slid a stapled packet onto the glass coffee table. Summary, I asked. Big picture, he said. Dad had an updated will. He made it clear he wanted the three of us to handle the operations. I'm stepping in as CEO. Melissa will oversee public image and philanthropy. Ryan's handling the digital and trust structures. Melissa gave a small nod like she was on a panel. It's all already in motion. We moved quickly after everything to make sure there were no gaps. I felt my fingers tighten around the armrest, and me. You're provided for, Melissa said quickly. There's a spousal support trust, living expenses, healthcare, staff. You don't need to worry about the business. I held her gaze. Your father and I discussed his estate every year. He never mentioned a will that cut me out of decision-making. Ryan spoke without looking up. He didn't cut you out, Mom. He just streamlined. It's easier for us to handle the moving parts. Then I'd like to see the full documents, I said. The will, trusts, all of it. Evan's smile tightened. Felix is still organizing everything for probate. This, he tapped the packet, has what matters for you. You don't need the legalese. I'll still see it, I said. I'll call Felix. A flicker crossed Evan's face. There's really no need to bother him. We're his point of contact. If he's our estate attorney, I said calmly, then I'm his client. The room went quiet for a breath. Melissa shifted, then brightened as if remembering a script cue. Actually, Dad did leave you something specific. She reached into her bag and pulled out a black phone, older model, scuffed edges. She set it down in front of me. He told us you should have this, she said you'd know what to do with it. I stared at it, my husband's personal phone, the one he kept separate from the company phone. The last time I saw it, it was glowing on his nightstand the evening before his stroke. I picked it up, cold dead. It's locked, Ryan said quickly. We tried the usual passwords, no luck. Maybe he used something only you'd remember. Of course they'd tried. Evan checked his watch. Mom, everything is secure, you're protected. That's what Dad wanted. Let us carry the stress, you just focus on grieving. Melissa leaned forward, resting a manicured hand on my knee for a second. We're just honoring his wishes. Trust us, okay? Trust us. I looked at the packet on the table, no seals, no signatures visible, and at the dead phone in my hand. My husband, who'd never made a major decision without at least arguing with me about it first, had supposedly rewritten our future and said nothing. Fine, I said, I'll read this summary and I'll still call Felix. Ryan closed his laptop a little too carefully. Just don't overdo it, Mom. Dad hated when you stressed. They stood almost in unison, Quick hugs, polite words, cologne and perfume that lingered longer than they did. The front door closed. The house fell back into its old, heavy silence. I looked down at the phone. My faint reflection stared back from the black screen. If their story was true, that packet would confirm it. But my husband had left me this phone, not a speech, not a letter, and they had left me a summary, not the will. I reached for a charger with hands that were steadier than my heart. If the truth wasn't in what they showed me, maybe it was hidden in what they thought I'd never be able to unlock. By the time the phone reached 50%, I'd already learned more from Google than my children had told me in that living room. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, the charger stretching from the outlet to my husband's old phone on the counter, one screen loading, one screen dark. The Hale Properties website looked the same, our logo, our slogan, that same photo of the Dallas skyline he'd agonized over choosing. Only one thing was different. A banner across the top. Hale Properties announces new CEO, EVAN Hale. My eyes jumped to the date, 3 days after the funeral. I clicked. Evan's face filled the screen, standing in front of the building with our name on it. I'm honored to carry on my father's legacy. The quotes blurred: strategic vision, long-term growth, commitment to community. I'd listened to my husband give versions of that speech for years. Evan's voice echoed his, but the timing was all wrong. Below it, another headline. Hale Foundation expands under new leadership. Melissa this time, perfect hair, perfect dress, perfect handshake. Melissa Hale, Director of Public Image and Philanthropy. That title was new, the date under it wasn't. 4 days after the funeral. They hadn't just moved quickly, they'd had this ready. A notification popped up in the corner of my laptop, an email from one of the custodial banks. Subject: Digital Asset Consolidation Confirmation. I opened it. Multiple accounts, family investment accounts, corporate digital wallets, even the small tech fund Raymond had set up for fun, now listed under a single consolidated trust. Authorized representative, RYAN Hale. No co-trustee, no mention of me. The consolidation date, 2 days after the funeral. I sat back, heartbeat pounding in my ears. In less than a week, my husband had been buried, his company had a new CEO, his daughter had a new public title, and his youngest son had gathered every digital key into his own hands. All without one real conversation with the woman who'd slept next to him for 40 years. My gaze drifted to the phone on the counter. The screen was lit now, quietly asking for a passcode, 4 empty circles waiting. Not yet, I murmured. I needed to know what game I was actually playing before I tried to unlock anything. 10 minutes later, I was in my car. Felix's office was all glass and quiet money, thick carpet, soft chairs, abstract art meant to suggest stability. His receptionist ushered me straight back with the kind of look people give widows and hurricanes. Felix stood as I walked in. "Charlotte," he said, coming around the desk, "I was hoping you'd come." "Funny," I said, taking a seat. "My children seemed very sure you were unavailable." A shadow crossed his face. He opened a folder already waiting on his desk and turned it toward me. "This is the last fully executed will I have on file," he said. "Signed, witnessed, notarized. Your husband was thorough." My name appeared on almost every page. Co-trustee, decision-maker, safeguard. "This," I said slowly, "is not what they described to me." "No," Felix said, "it is." He pulled out a thinner folder. "3 days ago your children brought me something else, an updated version, no proper witnesses, no seal, and the signature," he shook his head, "it didn't match the man I watched sign contracts for 20 years. Heat climbed up my chest, but my voice stayed level. "They told me everything was final, that the 3 of them were in charge now." Felix leaned back, studying me. "When we last spoke, Raymond mentioned one thing that bothered me at the time. He said, if they push too hard, I have safeguards." The word rang in my ears, safeguards. "He was a man who liked backups," Felix went on. "I've always suspected he drafted a secondary estate structure, a contingency the kids couldn't tamper with." "A backup plan," I said. Yes, he replied, but if it exists, he didn't lodge it here. He would have kept it somewhere more controlled, somewhere tied directly to you. The weight of my purse dug into my shoulder. Felix, I asked carefully, if there were instructions somewhere private, encrypted, recorded, whatever you call it, would that matter in court? It could, he said, if we can prove authenticity and intent, it could change everything. I set my bag on the desk, unzipped it, and placed my husband's old phone between us. He left me this, I said quietly. They left me a summary. Felix stared at the phone like it might start speaking. What if, I asked, pulse steady now, the empire my children are already running isn't the one my husband actually meant to leave behind? Felix didn't touch the phone, not at first. He just looked at it between us, then at me. Whatever is on there, he said quietly, you need to see it before anyone else does at home, Al. 1. He slid open a drawer, took out a slim black flash drive and set it beside the phone. If there are documents, send me copies from a secure account. Do not forward anything to yourself that your children can access. You think they're watching me? I asked. I think, he said, they're underestimating you. Let's not correct that yet. I waited until after dark. The house was different at night without Raymond's presence, no TV murmuring, no footsteps, no calls from Asia on speaker, just the air conditioner kicking on and off and the faint buzz of the refrigerator. I moved through the rooms without turning on more lights than I had to, old habits from raising babies and avoiding waking them. In the kitchen, I plugged his phone into the outlet under the cabinets, the cord stretched tight like a tripwire. I propped a cookbook in front of it in case anyone happened to look through the back door, even though no one ever just dropped by unannounced anymore. The screen lit up with the charging symbol. My own reflection floated over it for a second, then disappeared. While the battery crawled upward, I made tea I didn't drink. I wiped down a clean counter. I checked the front door twice, then checked my own phone to make sure none of the kids had texted. They hadn't. When the battery icon finally turned green enough to attempt anything, I dried my hands on a dish towel and pulled the phone toward me. 4 empty circles waited on the lock screen. I tried the obvious first, the year he was born, denied, his favorite number combination, the one he used on gym locks and briefcases, denied. My heart beat faster, 3 tries used. I had no idea how many I'd get before it locked me out for good. I tried the house number, the street address from our first tiny bungalow, Ryan's birthday, Melissa's, Evan S. variations of them. Each rejection buzzed in my hand like a tiny, impersonal insult. I set the phone down, breathing too shallow. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I could hear Ryan calmly explaining two-factor authentication, explaining how older people always reused passwords. Older people, his parents. I forced myself to step back from the counter. Pacing helped me think. I circled the kitchen island like I used to when I was rocking a colicky baby, trying to remember the moments when Raymond had actually been sentimental. He hated Hallmark holidays, thought anniversaries were for amateurs and that every day should show commitment, not just the ones with cards. And yet, the only time he ever remembered a date before I did was our anniversary. He'd joke about it at parties, how it was the one thing he never forgot because Charlotte is the only contract I will never renegotiate. I picked up the phone again. Month, day, year, the numbers of that hot, humid afternoon in June when we'd both sweated through our wedding clothes in a small church outside Houston. I typed them in and pressed my thumb to the glass before I could second-guess myself. The screen paused, then unlocked. My knees nearly gave out. I pulled out a chair and sank into it, staring as his home screen shimmered into view, background image of a lake we'd once rented a cabin on, app icons in tidy rows, the little red badges of unanswered messages. Hi, I whispered to a man who wasn't there. I opened his Files app first. Years of being married to a man who hoarded contracts had taught me where he tucked things. A folder near the top caught my eye. Hailed personal. Inside several subfolders, one was labeled in his usual impatient shorthand, CPC. I tapped it. Documents filled the screen, neatly named. Contingency plan, see summary. Contingency plan, see trust architecture. Contingency plan, see succession conditions. My throat went dry. Below the documents was another subfolder, audio. The little date stamps beside each file were from the week before his stroke, one of them the night he'd put this phone face down on the nightstand while I brought him tea. My finger hovered, but first I forced myself to do the thing Felix would tell me to do. I carried the phone and the flash drive up to the small office I'd carved out of the guest bedroom. My old desktop Word to life like it too wasn't used to doing anything important anymore. I plugged in the flash drive, then using the cable Ryan himself had once insisted I keep for backups, I connected Raymond's phone and started copying. The progress bar moved too slowly. Folder by folder, document by document, each file name a quiet act of betrayal against the version of reality my children had tried to sell me. Corporate fractures, family pressure, safeguards for Charlotte. Those phrases jumped out at me as the previews flashed past. He hadn't just made a backup plan, he'd written my name into it. When the last file finished transferring, I ejected the drive with hands that only shook a little and slipped it into the pocket of my robe. Back downstairs in the dim light of the kitchen, I picked up the phone one more time and tapped on the first audio file. His name flashed across the top. Voice memo: R. Hale, 7 days before admittance. I lifted the phone to my ear. And for the first time since he died, my husband's voice filled the silence of our house. His voice filled the kitchen like he'd just stepped in from the garage. If I sound angry, Raymond said, it's because I am. Not boardroom Raymond, this was the version I heard when he couldn't sleep. A glass clinked somewhere near the microphone. Evan brought that damn transition deck again, he muttered. 35 slides on why it's time for me to step back. Says the market wants fresh leadership. Says I'm emotionally attached to legacy assets. A humorless breath of a laugh. I am attached, he said, because I built them. Now my own son's talking like a private equity shark. He's already met with lenders without looping me in, using my name to open doors I'm not even invited into. I saw Evan at the coffee table again, portfolio on his lap, already wearing the crown. He's thinking like a CEO, Raymond said quietly, not like a son. The recording clicked off. The silence after was brutal, just the refrigerator, the clock, and my heartbeat in my ears. I tapped the next memo. New topic, he said, voice tighter. Melissa. Paper rustled. I pictured him in his study, sleeves rolled up, staring at numbers. She finally showed me the accounts, he said, or rather the bank did when they got nervous. He read balances, interest, credit lines, my daughter's life written in red ink. Close to 7 figures, he said, personal, cards, stylists, flights, brand investments. She calls it building our image, I call it gambling with a last name she didn't earn. He paused softer. She sobbed, he admitted, said no one takes a Hale seriously if she doesn't look like money. I should have reined it in sooner, that's on me, but if I go first she'll wrap herself in grief and the boys will cover for her. They hate confrontation more than debt. A chair creaked. I won't let her drag you under with her, he said, or the company. The memo ended. I hadn't moved. My tea was stone cold. I opened the third file with a thumb that didn't quite feel attached to me. Ryan, he said, and I heard both pride and suspicion in that single word. My little genius. Keyboard clacks, the low whir of a fan. He's been rerouting digital flows, Raymond said. New consolidated trust, new keys, all technically legal, all done for efficiency. Another pause. But he's doing it behind my back, he said. Building a structure where whoever controls the passwords controls the empire, and he's betting that by the time it matters, that person isn't me. He drew in a breath I could almost feel. I love them, he said. God, I love them, but they're already circling what I built and I'm not even in the ground. If this stroke risk turns into the worst-case scenario, you need leverage, Charlotte, options. That's why this goes to you. You see people the way they really are. The memo cut. I stared at the screen. My children hadn't stolen a dead man's world. They'd been carving it up while he was still very much alive. Grief twisted into something sharper. I took the phone upstairs, shut the office door, and logged into the anonymous email account I'd just created. One by one, I attached the documents and all 3 memos. In the subject line, I typed with shaking fingers. From our Hales personal device, urgent. I sent it to Felix's private address and watched the little paper plane vanish like I'd thrown a match onto dry brush. My phone rang less than 10 minutes later. Charlotte, Felix said, voice low, I've listened to enough. My throat felt tight. Is it what you thought? It's more, he said. This isn't just evidence of bad behavior, this is leverage, strategic, surgical leverage. I looked down at Raymond's phone, at the next memo on the list, stamped with the date of the night he could barely climb the stairs. What else did he record, I whispered, that they never meant for me to hear? I didn't shower, I just changed clothes, grabbed the phone, and drove back to Felix's. He closed his office door behind me, no small talk this time. Sit, he said, I think your husband planned for exactly this. A printed stack waited on his desk, edges perfectly aligned. My stomach dropped. Last night, he went on, I kept staring at one of the PDFs you sent. Tiny footer at the bottom looked like a vault ID. Raymond knew I'd recognize the format. He picked up my husband's phone, opened the Notes app, and turned the screen toward me. Vault if they push too hard. ID string of characters. PW C+C+ year. C+C, Felix said, Charles and Charlotte, your initials, and the year you were married. He didn't need to say the rest. I pictured him entering it, the invisible lock clicking open. He stored a contingency structure in a private cloud vault, Felix said. Didn't file it with me, didn't file it with the court. He kept it where only someone with this phone and your marriage could get to it. He slid the top page toward me. Across the heading, Last Will and Testament of Raymond Hale Contingency Plan. My name was there in bold legal font. I appoint my wife, Charlotte Hale, as sole controlling trustee of all Hale family entities until her death or voluntary resignation. Beneath that, my children shall be beneficiaries only, subject at all times to her supervision and approval regarding management roles. I felt the air leave my lungs. So they were never meant to be over me, I said, only under me. Felix nodded. Legally, you're the firewall. Any updated will cutting you out is not only invalid. He pulled out the thin packet they'd brought him. It's a bad forgery, wrong signature, no witness log, no notary, it collapses on contact. Heat rose in my face, not from shame this time, but from clarity. They didn't just lie to me, I said, they tried to erase what he actually signed. Felix was already at his computer. We file this contingency will, introduce the vault logs, attach your husband's recordings, and ask the court to freeze any asset movement that contradicts his true intent. Freeze, I repeated. It stops Evan from acting as unquestioned CEO, stops Ryan from shifting more digital assets, stops Melissa from leveraging the foundation. It puts everything on hold until a judge sorts it out. He printed a short authorization and slid it to me with a pen. Once you sign, he said, this becomes official. You won't just be their mother, you'll be the person on the other side of the legal line. My hand shook only once before I steadied it and signed. Felix gathered the papers like a man collecting live wires. I'll have this at the courthouse within the hour. A soft knock at the glass made us both look up. His receptionist stood there, pale, holding a pink message slip. Felix read it, then exhaled through his nose. Charlotte, he said, meeting my eyes, word travels fast. He turned the slip so I could see. Call from Evan Hale, tell my mother I'm coming down there. SHES confused, and I'm going to fix this. They didn't make it to Felix's office. By the time Evan finished coming down there, the filings were already on their way to the courthouse. Felix walked me to the elevator, his hand light on my elbow. Let him yell at me on email, he said. Your battlefield is at home, and remember, no signatures on anything. They chose the formal living room again. I let them wait there for a full 5 minutes while I finished pouring myself a glass of water in the kitchen. Small, petty, satisfying. When I walked in, they were all on their feet. Evan stepped forward first, smile already in place, voice dialed to calm. Mom, you've had a busy morning, huh? I sat in my armchair, the one with the tiny rip in the cushion, apparently. He took the sofa directly across from me, angling his body just so, open posture, hands visible. Melissa slid in beside him, crossing her legs, tablet in hand. Ryan hovered on the edge of the other chair, eyes on his smartwatch. We're worried about you, Evan started. We heard from Felix that you've been anxious, confused. It's understandable after everything. Is that what Felix said? I asked mildly. Evan hesitated, then painted over it with another smile. We just want to protect you, Mom, that's all this is. Melissa leaned forward, switching on the charm she used for gala donors. There's so much noise right now, lawyers, banks, the press sniffing around the transition. We thought it might help if we put some things in writing, clear support, clear structure, so you never have to worry about money ever. She tapped her tablet. A document slid out from a leather folder and onto the coffee table like a magician's trick. Financial support agreement, she said brightly. We had the firm draft it. It just formalizes what we're already doing, covering your expenses, medical care, household staff, all of that. You sign and it's guaranteed for life. Ryan's smartwatch buzzed. He swiped at it without looking up. I didn't touch the document. What does it give you? I asked. Evan chuckled softly. That's a very Raymond question. He taught me well, I said. Melissa's smile tightened by a millimeter. It just streamlines governance, confirms that we're handling operations so you don't get dragged into the stress. Standard stuff. Felix can review it later if that makes you feel better. I watched her eyes carefully. She'd forgotten I'd seen those memos. Forgotten I now knew exactly how she behaved when money and consequences were in the same room. I already had Felix review something this morning, I said. He was very helpful. Ryan's fingers froze on his watch for a second, then started moving again. I finally picked up the document, not to read, just to feel the weight of it. The first line was big and friendly: financial care arrangement for Charlotte Hale. 4 paragraphs down, buried in smaller print, language about irrevocably delegating all present and future rights of control, management, and challenge to her adult heirs. Nice. I set it back down. I'm not signing this, I said. Melissa blinked. You don't have to decide right now. I've already decided. Evan's jaw twitched. He leaned in, lowering his voice like we were co-conspirators. Mom, this is protection. Once this mess with Felix blows over, this ensures you're safe no matter what the courts do. You really want to gamble your security because you're upset. I folded my hands in my lap so he wouldn't see them shake, not from fear but from rage, held very, very still. Evan, I said quietly, do you remember what your father always said about documentation? He frowned. That it's a pain in the ass. That it's the only thing that tells the truth when people start lying, I said. Melissa let out a breathy laugh. Mom, no one is lying to you. This is literally the opposite. We're putting everything on paper so you don't have to worry about rumors or... Your father documented everything, I said. I didn't raise my voice, I just let each word land. Evan stilled. Melissa's fingers tightened around her pen. Ryan finally looked up from his watch. Everything, I repeated: conversations, pressures, debts, asset transfers, intent. A muscle jumped in Evan's cheek. What does that mean? He asked. It means, I said, that whatever story you've been telling yourselves about how all this should go may not be the one a judge hears. As if on cue, Ryan's smartwatch buzzed again, then Evan's phone vibrated on the table. Melissa's tablet lit up with a notification. 3 sets of eyes dropped to their screens. One by one, their faces drained of color. I didn't have to see the messages to know what they said. Somewhere downtown, a courthouse had just agreed with my dead husband. Every asset they'd hurried to grab was now officially out of their hands. They left angry that day, but anger doesn't stay on the surface with my children. It seeps down and comes back up as strategy. 2 days after the freeze orders hit, they showed up together again, no appointment, no warning. This time they brought cardboard boxes. We're here to help, Melissa announced, breezing past me into the hall. You've got so much clutter with everything going on legally, it's better if things are organized. Organized for who? I asked. For everyone, Evan said, already loosening his tie like that made him more relatable. If this drags on, people are going to start asking where documents are, what's been done. The cleaner your house is, the easier it is to show you're not confused. Ah, there it was. Ryan didn't hug me. He gave a tight half-smile and slipped his hands into his pockets, eyes moving around the entryway like he was mapping it. I stepped aside and let them in, saying no outright would only confirm whatever narrative they were trying to build. Let them help. By then, the phone was no longer in my purse. That felt too obvious, too easy to accuse me of misplacing. I tucked it into an old tin inside my sewing basket, the one place in the house no one under 50 had any interest in. They started in the study. We just want to make sure nothing gets lost, Evan said, already pulling files from drawers, stacking them into keep and shred piles without asking. Melissa moved through shelves, plucking anything with a legal letterhead. Half of this is outdated, she said loud enough for anyone listening at a distance that wasn't there. No wonder Felix is confused. I followed them, not stopping them, just watching what they gravitated toward. Any envelope with bank branding, anything stamped original. Careful, I said once when Melissa dropped a folder too hard. Some of those are older than you. She rolled her eyes. Exactly. An hour later, the study looked like a crime scene. Boxes labeled in Melissa's looping script: archive, trash, review. Nothing went into a box without her snapping a picture on her phone first. Optics, she muttered when she saw me notice. If this ends up in court, we need proof we tried to help. In the bedroom, Evan opened drawers, talking as he rifled. Dad trusted me with this stuff, he said. He asked me to step up to handle the heavy lift so you wouldn't have to. I wish you'd remember that before you went behind our backs to Felix. I stood in the doorway. Your father trusted me enough to marry me, I said. Everything else is a subset of that. His jaw worked. He shut the drawer harder than necessary. Down the hall, I heard Melissa on the phone with someone, her voice pitched soft and wounded. Yes, we're very worried, she said. She's been making some erratic choices. We're just trying to document it in case we need to protect her legally. Protect her legally. In the laundry room, Ryan found me alone, folding dish towels I'd already folded once. Mom, he said quietly, you know this doesn't have to get ugly. I kept my eyes on the towel. Doesn't it? He shifted his weight. The bravado he wore with his siblings slipped a little. Please don't go against us. The more you fight, the more they're going to push for measures, capacity evaluations, guardianship petitions. Just don't give them a reason. You mean don't give them proof they're wrong, I said. He exhaled through his nose. I mean don't make me choose between you and survival. For a second, my heart forgot he was a grown man and saw the 12-year-old who'd once hidden behind me when thunder shook the windows. You already chose, I said softly. You just think I'm not supposed to notice. By late afternoon, every visible drawer, cabinet, and file box had been touched. They hadn't found what they were looking for because they didn't know what it was. They never once asked about the sewing basket in the corner of the guest room, buried under old quilts and unfinished projects. When they finally left with their boxes, their photos, their curated concern, I went straight to it. I lifted the lid, moved aside spools of thread and an unfinished baby blanket for a grandchild who no longer visited, and found the tin exactly where I'd left it. The phone sat inside, dark and safe. I held it in both hands, feeling its weight. They'd spent all day trying to prove I was losing my grip on reality. What they didn't understand was simple. Reality belongs to the person who holds the records. And in my house, that was still me. I didn't block their numbers. I just stopped answering. Texts stacked up in little blue and gray bubbles. Missed calls lined the log like teeth. I let the phone lie face down on the counter, sound off, vibration off. The only person I called back was Felix. Day 1, the messages were soft. Evan, Mom, call me, we can fix this. Melissa, this isn't you. Lawyers are poisoning things. Ryan, we should talk about the tech stuff before it gets complicated. I made myself a sandwich I didn't eat and turned on an old movie. The house hummed around me. For the first time since the funeral, their voices weren't inside it. By day 3, the tone changed. Felix called to brief me. Lenders have questions, he said. The freeze hit their covenant checks. They're asking Evan for trustee confirmations with your signature on them. Do they have any? I asked. No, he said, and that's the problem for them. That afternoon, Evan tried a different angle. This is spiraling, Mom. You're putting everything Dad built at risk. Lenders are getting nervous. The board is rattled. Call me back so we can show them you're not being manipulated. Not confused, manipulated. The word choice made me smile, bitter and small. Melissa fought a different war. I saw it from a distance, on the anonymous account I'd made years ago to check on the grandkids' photos. A new post, a black and white picture of her and Raymond at a gala, his arm around her, captioned, "Grief tests families in ways you can't imagine. Some of us are just trying to honor his legacy through the chaos. Do the right thing, family first." The comments were exactly what she wanted. Stay strong, people show their true colors when money's involved, praying for you. Later, a DM slid into my real account. If you care about how Dad is remembered, please don't drag this into public court. We can settle it privately. Think about the brand. The brand. Ryan's panic didn't show up on social media, it leaked through Felix. We've got forensic auditors reviewing the digital transfers, Felix told me. Your youngest used some creative routing, not enough to go to prison over, but enough to look very bad in front of a judge. That night, Ryan texted, "Mom, the investigators don't understand how the systems were set up. They're going to misread everything. Please answer. Please don't let them think I'm some criminal." I stared at the message long enough for the typing bubble to appear on his side. Then I locked the screen. Silence is louder when you've always been the one to smooth things over. When the designated peacemaker sits down and folds her hands, everyone else suddenly hears how much noise they've been making. But silence also leaves you alone with her own thoughts. Mine were starting to fray at the edges. I needed someone who knew the law, knew my family, and didn't owe any of us a damn thing. So I called Naomi. Judge Naomi Carter had been retired for years, but authority didn't retire with her. It lived in the way she opened her front door. No nonsense, no pity, just clear eyes and a cardigan that had seen more depositions than most attorneys. "You look like hell," she said, then kissed my cheek. "Come in." Her house smelled like lemon oil and old books. We sat at her kitchen table, coffee between us, Felix's printouts and my own scribbled notes spread out like evidence. She read in silence for a long time, lips moving just slightly over key phrases. Contingency will, sole controlling trustee, audio memos, asset freeze. When she finally looked up, her gaze was sharp enough to cut glass. "They forged his name," she said, not a question. "They tried," I replied. She nodded once. "And your husband built you a private escape hatch they never knew about. Typical Raymond, couldn't just say what he meant, had to engineer it." I let out something between a laugh and a sob. I don't know if I'm honoring him or weaponizing him. Naomi leaned back. "Let me ask you something, Charlotte. When he set this up, who did he put at the center?" "Me," I said. The word felt both heavy and unreal. "And why?" she pressed. "Because he trusted me," I whispered. "More than them, more than himself some days." She tapped the will with 2 fingers. "Then use that trust. This isn't you stealing their inheritance. This is you enforcing the rules he wrote when he still had all his faculties." Tears pricked my eyes. "They're my children." "And you are their mother," she said. "Not their victim, not their mascot. Ask yourself, if you back down now, what are you teaching them about power and consequence?" I stared at the papers, at my name in all caps, over and over. Naomi's voice softened. "The court will do what the law requires. The question is, are you prepared to stand there while it does, even if they hate you for it?" I swallowed hard. For the first time, I heard my answer clearly. "Yes," I said, "I am." Naomi gave a small, satisfied nod. "Good, then the next time they come at you with questions and theatrics, you give them nothing." She slid the will back toward me. "Let the judge be the one to answer them." Probate court was colder than it needed to be. I sat beside Felix at the petitioner's table, hands folded, back straight. Across the aisle, my children sat with their attorney, sleek navy suit, perfect hair, a man who looked like he billed by the minute and slept just fine. Evan stared at the judge's bench, jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscle tick. Melissa had a tissue balled in one hand, perfectly smudgeless makeup in place. Ryan kept pushing his glasses up even though they hadn't slipped. "All rise," the bailiff called. The judge walked in, late 60s, iron gray hair, glasses low on her nose, the kind of woman who'd seen every version of family greed. "This is the estate of Raymond Hale," she said. "We're here to resolve conflicting documents regarding control and succession." Felix stood. "Your Honor, we're submitting Mr. Hale's contingency will, authenticated from a private cloud vault accessed using credentials he left exclusively to his wife." Opposing counsel jumped up, talking about last-minute documents and confusion in grief. The judge held up a hand. "I'll decide what's confusing," she said. "Proceed, Mr. Morin." Felix laid out the pieces, Raymond's long pattern of careful planning, the vault logs, the time-stamped signatures. Then he pressed play on the first recording. "If I sound angry, it's because I am." Raymond's voice filled the room. He talked about Evan's transition deck, about being pushed to step back, about lenders being approached behind his back. Evan's face drained as his own strategy was narrated in his father's voice. Next clip: Melissa's debts, nearly 7 figures, her using the family name as a parachute, her tears, his worry, his line about not letting her drag me or the company under. Finally, Ryan's new consolidated trust, efficiency, building a system where the person with the passwords owned the empire, pride and warning braided together. When the last memo clicked off, the courtroom was very, very quiet. The judge picked up the thin, updated will my children had brought Felix months ago. "This document," she said, "has no reliable witnesses, no notarial seal, and a signature inconsistent with Mr. Hale's historic record. It holds no legal weight. The court will not recognize it." Evan's attorney started to argue. She cut him off. "On the other hand, the contingency will bears valid digital signatures verified by an independent provider and directly aligns with the decedent's expressed concerns in his own voice." She looked at me. "Mrs. Hale, please stand." I did. "This court finds that you are the sole controlling Trustee of all Hale family operating entities and voting interests until your death or voluntary resignation. Your children are beneficiaries only, subject to conditions and your oversight. Any authority they have exercised inconsistent with that arrangement is revoked, effective immediately." Her gavel hit once, clean, final. Behind me, Melissa sucked in a breath. Ryan whispered, "No," like the word could rewind anything. Evan half rose from his chair before his attorney yanked him back down. I gathered my bag and walked out without turning around. On the courthouse steps, my phone buzzed, a message from Felix, a copy of the signed order already on its way to every bank, every board, every office with our name on the door. For the first time, the empire wasn't something I'd married into. It was something I legally owned. And my children had no idea what I was going to do with that power. The building hadn't changed, I had. Same glass, same revolving doors, same Hale Properties letters glinting in the Dallas sun. Only this time when I walked in, the security guard straightened like someone had just saluted. "Good morning, Mrs. Hale," he said. "We got the court notice." So had every bank and every board. Upstairs, the executive floor felt tight, air-conditioned, and tense. Conversations dipped as I walked past. People who'd avoided my eyes at past holiday parties suddenly met them. The CFO stepped out of his office. "Mrs. Hale," he said, and I heard it in his voice, relief. "Welcome." Evan emerged from his corner office, jacket off, tie loose, playing casual. "Mom, you should have told me you were coming. We could have set up a briefing." "I didn't come for a briefing," I said. "I came to work." We gathered in the big conference room, department heads, legal, finance, IT. I took the chair at the head of the table, Raymond's chair. Evan sat to my right now, not opposite. Felix's packet sat in front of me, the court order on top. "I'll be brief," I said. "The judge has recognized the structure my husband actually signed. As of now, I am the controlling trustee. Any decision that uses our name or our money runs through me. If that surprises you, blame the people who didn't show you the whole picture." A murmur moved around the table, more exhale than protest. "We've been moving very fast," the CFO said carefully. "Some of us had concerns about leverage and optics." "Then we'll slow down," I said. "First, all discretionary marketing and image spending is frozen. No new galas, partnerships, private travel, or branded vanity projects without my written approval." Melissa wasn't there, but her absence filled a chair. "Second," I went on, "no new loans, refinances, or covenant changes without my signature. If a lender calls, you direct them to me or to Mr. Morin." It slid a folder across the table, printouts of Ryan's digital routing, colorful lines showing money bouncing across entities like a pinball. "Third, we're bringing in independent auditors," I said. "Financial and digital, their job is to tell us exactly what exists and who touched it. Anyone who cooperates fully keeps their seat at this table. Anyone who doesn't won't." Ryan finally spoke. "Those structures were for efficiency, Mom, if someone doesn't understand the code." "Then you'll explain it," I said, "to them and, if necessary, to a regulator." When the meeting ended, I held Evan back. "Your role is changing," I told him. "Effective today, you're a senior advisor, not CEO." His face went blank. "That's a demotion." "That's reality," I said. "This," I tapped the court order, "is the only title that matters now." For a moment, I thought he might explode. Instead, he looked away, jaw tight, like he was swallowing something sharp. Leaving the building, I felt the eyes on my back again, only now they weren't wary. They were watchful, waiting. In the car, my phone buzzed with a message from Felix and a photo, a small, heavy key tagged in Raymond's handwriting. "Private vault, Charlotte only." Felix's text followed. "He left you more than a phone. Whenever you're ready, we'll see what else he didn't trust them to handle." The vault building looked like a place you'd walk past 1,000 times and never notice. No big bank logo, just a brushed metal plaque and a lobby so quiet my footsteps sounded rude. Felix met me by the elevators, turning the small, heavy key in his fingers. "His firm sent it over this morning," he said. "It was tagged for you." We went down 2 levels, thick doors, scanners, signatures. Finally, the manager led us into a narrow room lined with steel boxes. "Box 317, he said. "Access, Mrs. Charlotte Hale only." He left. Felix set the key in the lock, then stepped back. "You want to do the honors?" I did. The drawer slid out with a soft metal scrape. No velvet trays, no jewelry, just a neat stack of papers tied with a blue ribbon and on top an envelope with my name in his rushed handwriting. "Charlotte." My throat tightened. I opened it. "If you are eating this," they pushed too hard. "Start at the bottom, work your way up." I almost laughed. Of course he was still giving me instructions. At the bottom of the stack, a thick document, heavy paper, simple title. "Trust Agreement for Charlotte's Independence." The word independence hit harder than the dollar amounts. I flipped through a clean portfolio, properties I'd assumed were just folded into the company. A downtown building free of debt, several rentals, and cash, all placed in a structure with one beneficiary and one decision-maker. Grantor grants to Charlotte Hale full, unrestricted control of the trust corpus, including sale, transfer, or encumbrance, without obligation to report to heirs or co-trustees. "No reporting obligations," Felix murmured. "This sits outside the kids' war permanently." Behind it were older deeds, some with notes in the margins in his cramped handwriting. "You always loved this view. Keep this if you want a place by the water." Near the top, another envelope, my name again, written slower this time. "Jar. Our kids got my ambition and your spine, and sometimes that's a dangerous mix. You held the line for 40 years while I expanded it. You deserve one part of this life that's yours alone. This is it. Use these assets however lets you sleep. If that means rewarding them, fine. If it means protecting yourself from them, better." Thank you for putting up with the ambition in our children, and in me. If they make you choose between their comfort and your freedom, choose you. I built this trust so you'd have that option. Our grief and relief crashed into each other so hard I had to sit down. He hadn't just trusted me to enforce his plan. He'd given me a life raft entirely my own. Felix broke the silence gently. When we redo the inheritance terms, he said, this gives you room to set real conditions, behavioral, ethical. You're not trapped by what they expect anymore. I retied the ribbon around the stack, feeling something settle inside me. For the first time, I said, sliding the papers back into the box, their future doesn't depend on how loudly they demand it. I locked the drawer. It depends, I added, on what I decide they actually deserve. They called it a family meeting, like that word still meant what it used to. I didn't pace, I didn't rehearse. I set 3 mugs on the kitchen table, laid a neat stack of folders beside me, and waited. Evan came in first, already wound tight. Melissa followed, drowning in an oversized sweater, barefaced like she'd dressed for sympathy. Ryan hovered at the doorway, hands in his pockets, eyes flicking over everything. Do you have any idea what you're doing? Evan started, not even sitting yet. To this family, to Dad's legacy. Sit down, I said. He did, but barely. You've frozen projects, scared lenders, dragged the company through court, he went on. You're tearing down what he built because you're angry at us. Melissa leaned forward, voice soft, trembling just enough. Mom, I am not okay right now. My therapist says my anxiety is off the charts. The comments online, the gossip, the stress, her eyes filled. If you keep this going, I don't know what I'll do. I really don't. I'm fragile. There it was. Ryan finally pulled out his chair. Look, he said, reasonable, palms up. We mishandled some things. I mishandled some things. I'm sorry for not looping you in, okay? For making you feel cut out. That was wrong. He let the apology sit a beat. If you let me back in, limited access, supervised, whatever, I can unwind most of what's making the auditors nervous. Present it as aggressive optimization, not misconduct. But I can't fix anything if I'm locked out. Blame fragility strategy, my children distilled. I opened the top folder and slid 3 stapled packets across the table. What's this? Evan asked. Your father, I said, in his own words. They stared at the pages, each with their names on top, each stamped with dates from the week before his stroke. In Evan S., I said, he describes you bringing him a transition deck, going to lenders without him, using his name to open doors while you pushed him toward the exit. Evan's mouth flattened. In Melissa S., he lists your accounts, almost 7 figures in personal debt. He calls it gambling with a last name she didn't earn. Her eyes flashed, the fragility slipping. In Ryan S., he walks through your digital rerouting, how you built a structure where the person with the passwords controls the empire, and how you did it behind his back. Ryan's face went pale. These recordings are in the court record, I said quietly. The contingency will is validated. I am the controlling trustee. I also control an independent trust you can't touch. I folded my hands. You don't negotiate with me as children anymore. You negotiate with the person who decides what you actually receive. I slid one last pad of paper into the center of the table, my handwriting clear at the top. Revised Air Terms Draft. When I'm finished, I said, looking at each of them in turn, what you thought you were owed and what you're allowed to earn are going to be 2 very different things. I didn't rewrite the inheritance in anger. I rewrote it at my dining room table with reading glasses on, 3 legal pads, and Felix and Naomi sitting across from me like a very patient tribunal. Felix had spread out the old structures, the original will, the contingency plan, though for Charlotte's independence trust like blueprints. Naomi had a red pen and 0 sentimentality. Think of this as zoning, she said, what belongs where and what behavior gets a permit. We started with the easiest cut. No managerial roles for any of them, I said, not now, not automatically later. Felix nodded, already typing. Beneficiaries only, no automatic board seats, no executive titles tied to blood. Good, Naomi said, if they want jobs they can apply like anyone else. Next came conditions. For distributions, Felix prompted, what matters most to you beyond not forging signatures? Accountability, I said, service, growth. For Evan, no inheritance distributions unless he completed governance training, stepped away from any leadership title at Hale Properties, and finished a set number of hours mentoring entrepreneurs who didn't share his last name. For Melissa, mandatory debt reduction milestones verified by an independent financial counselor, continued therapy, a cap on image expenditures tied to her actual earned income, not the Hale name, community service hours at organizations where no one knew who she was walking in. For Ryan, full cooperation with digital audits, restrictions on any future role involving unilateral control over passwords or keys, pro bono tech work for nonprofits systems he couldn't exploit. Who enforces all this? Felix asked. Not me, I said, not directly. I won't spend the rest of my life chasing their receipts. We drafted a new oversight layer, 2 independent professional trustees and 1 rotating community member from a nonprofit Raymond had supported. They would verify compliance, approve distributions, and freeze them if conditions were broken. Think they'll agree? Naomi asked. They don't have to, I said. This isn't a negotiation, it's a map. When the documents were ready, we went back to court, not probate this time, but a quiet hearing to formalize amendments and appointments. Naomi, in a simple blazer instead of robes, stood beside Felix as a consulting jurist. The judge reviewed the stack, amended trust terms, oversight appointments, donation instruments. These changes are within your authority as controlling trustee, he said, and consistent with the decedent's stated concerns, approved. His stamp thudded down. The last piece was mine alone. I signed the papers transferring several prime assets, an entire development earmarked for luxury condos, a chunk of our downtown holdings, into a new foundation in Raymond's name dedicated to affordable housing and ethical development. Are you sure? Felix asked, once this is done. It stays done, I said. He cared more about building than flaunting. I'm just catching up. When it was over, I walked out with a slim folder. Inside were the new terms of my children's future, no crowns, no automatic thrones, just paths they'd have to walk or lose. That night, I laid 3 identical envelopes on the kitchen table, each with their name on it and 1 line written in my hand. This is what your father left you. What you do with it is up to you. I didn't stay in the house. Once the dust settled, court orders stamped, trusts amended, auditors embedded, I walked through every room of that big, echoing place and realized I was done hosting ghosts. I sold it. Not to a developer, not to one of Evan's friends, to a young family with sticky-fingered kids who ran through the hallway during the showing and left handprints on the banister. It felt right. My new home sat 20 floors up in a quiet Dallas high-rise, all glass and soft light and views that didn't require me to remember anybody else's dreams. 2 bedrooms, a study, a balcony big enough for plants, and a small table. No grand staircase. No formal anything. The first night, I stood barefoot on the balcony, looking out over the city my husband had carved himself into. No family portraits on the walls yet. Just the hum of traffic and the faint clink of someone's dishes in another unit. For the first time in months, I slept without waking up choking on what-ifs. I built a new routine out of places we'd loved, but on my terms. On Tuesdays, I went to the little cafe where Raymond used to take me after zoning meetings, ordered 1 coffee instead of 2, and read a book instead of a site plan. On Thursdays, I drove past the first duplex we'd ever bought, now renovated and painted an unfortunate shade of blue, and let myself remember how proud he'd been of 2 doors and a shaky moor. T-gauge. Sometimes I went out to the lake house he'd left me in that trust, the one he'd labeled, "Keep this if you want a place by the water." I'd sit on the dock with my feet in the water and talk to him like he was on the porch, grumbling about contractors. The children adjusted around the new gravity. Melissa sent me screenshots at first therapy appointments, notes from her counselor, proof she was complying. Eventually the screenshots stopped and the calls started. "I'm actually getting something out of it," she admitted one afternoon. Apparently growing up in a house where everything was about image does things to you. It does, I said. You're not the only one it happened to. Ryan took a job 2 levels down at a mid-size firm with a real compliance department and a boss who wasn't related to him. It's different when you answer to someone who can fire you, he said with a wry half-smile over lunch. Turns out I'm not as brilliant when I can't hide things in the code. That's the brilliant part, I told him. Evan fought the longest. He resented the governance courses, the mentoring hours, the parenting classes Naomi suggested I write into his conditions. Then one evening he showed up at my condo alone holding a paperback book about raising emotionally healthy kids like it was a subpoena. The instructor says I confuse performance with love, he said, half mocking, half raw. Sound familiar? Yes, I said, on both sides of this table. Little by little, their updates shifted from demands, change this clause, loosen that condition, to reports, proof of effort instead of entitlement. I listened. I kept the terms. When they pushed, I said no. When they tried, I said, keep going. Peace wasn't everyone hugging in my old living room pretending none of it had happened. It was quieter than that, more conditional, like their inheritances. One evening, after they'd all left, Melissa for her group session, Ryan for a late shift, Evan to pick up his kids from a co-parenting workshop, I sat alone on my balcony with my husband's old phone in my hand. There was one recording I hadn't opened yet. The last one. I scrolled to the bottom of the list. Voice memo Arhale final. Same date as the night he joked about his old man knees and waved off seeing a doctor. The night I made his tea, annoyed and worried at the same time. Now I was on my high-rise balcony, Dallas glowing below, his old phone warm in my hand. I pressed play. For a moment, just the low hum of the air conditioner, then his voice. Okay, he said, sounding tired clear through, last one I think. He exhaled. Char, if you're hearing this, it means I didn't get as much time as I thought to fix the mess I let grow around us. So this is me trying to do it in advance. A small humorless laugh. I know what they put on you, he went on. Evan acting like you're a board he can manage. Melissa dragging you into every crisis so you can smooth it over. Ryan burying you in tech talk so you feel stupid for asking where the money went. He paused. I let that happen, he said quietly. It was easier to let you be the shock absorber. You were better at calming them down and I hid behind that. I'm sorry, Char, for all the dinners you spent refereeing, for the nights you lay awake worrying about numbers I should have been losing sleep over. My throat burned. These plans, the backup will, the independence trust, the vault, they're not revenge, he said. They're a way to give you a door out. If they ever make you choose between being the good mom and having peace, I want you to pick peace. Even if it means walking away from all of this, the company, the name, the circus. He drew in a breath that shook a little. If you decide to tighten things, good. If you decide to sell things, good. If you decide to give it away, good. Whatever lets you sleep, that's the right call. I trust your judgment more than I trust my own. Another pause. And don't let them reframe it, he added. I trusted them to chase deals. I trusted you to protect what actually mattered. If they say otherwise, that's their story, not mine. A soft scrape of his chair, one last sigh. I'm with you, he said, not them, you. The recording clicked off. The city kept humming, but for a moment it was just me and his words finally catching up to my life. You're allowed to choose yourself. Later, I opened the document on my laptop, the memoir I'd been writing in stolen hours, and typed the last line of the last chapter. They kept the empire, I kept its soul. Years from now, my children will probably remember courtrooms and conditions and terms they never imagined facing. I'll remember a balcony, a city at my feet, and an old phone that turned out to be a key. What they left me with, a locked phone, gave me back the future they tried to take.